In this episode of the HyperFast Show, we have got a special guest. He is a serial entrepreneur, has started over 20 companies. That's 20 companies this guest has started. He's written several books. Welcome to the show, Sean Castrina. Welcome to the show today, Sean. How are you doing?
I'm great. Excited to be on the show.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, and you've got a great story of, overcoming adversity and becoming a serial entrepreneur, mega successful business guy, and you've got a lot that you can teach our audience. So I'm excited about that. Before we jump into that, why don't you just give folks out there a little bit of your bio and background and what you're up to these days?
Yeah, no, I mean, I tried the typical route in my generation, over 40. You tried to, you went to college. That was the way to do it. Your parents didn't go to college, so you heard for 20 years why that held them back. So went to college on an athletic scholarship, graduated, got married, bought a house, had a child, did the little Norman Rockwell thing. Was working on a master's degree, one class away from my master's, and then I got let go of my dream job kind of overnight. And I realized that, employment, it works for some people. My daughter's a school teacher. My wife is a part-time nurse. It works for some people, but it wasn't going to be my road. I wasn't going to have somebody that had that much control, being able to be let go overnight. I mean, I didn't even know that was possible. And I remember negotiating my severance pay, and it was just like, I literally couldn't believe this was like going on, And so that made me realize then that, employment rarely has security, and that, in my early 20s, that I was going to take some control of this thing.
Yeah. And so I guess that was the catalyst for you to go on and become an entrepreneur. And now you've started like 20 or
yeah, I mean, we started
like
more than 20 companies, and over the years, I've had a wide ranging. I had a direct mail company that was in 23 cities, so that was like 9 companies spread out around the East Coast, and that did really well. Sold that in 2008. First business I started, wasn't very sexy. It was actually an auto detailing company. When I got let go, I started selling insurance and started an auto detailing company. It's still around. I sold that 20 years ago. They actually cleaned my cars about a week and a half ago. And I made $35,000 a year of passive income doing really nothing but branding the company, creating attracting customers, creating the system. And that gave me the blueprint. That was kind of the test tube. I knew once I did that, I guess I knew that I could make money in service companies, probably more so than any other thing. And that's why it's so important for people just to start something, even if it's at a very small scale, because a detailing company, there's nothing sexy about that idea. It's not like you go and you go, I own an auto detailing company, even though it was a great auto detailing company, and it had and this is the thing I like to share, it had all the frameworks of what you do with a great company. Even back then in my early 20s, the name of the company was Waxmaster Mobile Detailing. It said exactly what we did. Had an incredible logo, like a sponge squeezed in half, holding like a wax machine in his hands. The tagline was America's choice in mobile detailing. Extremely bold. I always, go big, go bold. Phone number was 888-933-3824, which is toll free. We detail. So, it had all the touch points even then. So I kind of, once I started, I'm like, this is easy for me, like branding, creating, attracting customers. I can do that. I don't ever want to do any of the work, and I've never cleaned a car since then, or I never cleaned any then. But it's just kind of the idea behind it. I think people think they need to, have this ridiculously great idea, like Shark Tank, and that's just not necessarily the case.
Yeah, I do think there's something to that. Like, people think they need to come up with the next Facebook or, Instagram or Google or whatever. And really, there's a lot of profit in the basic stuff and the stuff that's dirty, maybe not sexy. I think in our show, we have a lot of real estate agents that watch, and maybe they see $1 million listing, right? And they're thinking at that level, but there's a lot to be said, just door knocking, calling expireds, right? Kind of the nitty gritty, dirty, basic stuff. You can make a really good, multiple 6-figure living doing and have high chances of success. So it's not always
it's rarely the sexy
yeah.
idea. I interviewed somebody on my podcast, and she cleans up dead bodies. It's a decomp company, and she goes to basically, crime scenes and or where people have passed away, accidents, stuff. I mean, really, she was a police officer, and she realized that, it wasn't a lot of people wanted to clean these sites up. Well, now she has like 35 franchises, and, I never thought of something like that, but she's like, people die. And the family don't know what to do with, all the, what's left there. I mean, that's like the furthest thing that would ever cross my mind. But within her business, she saw the need. And it's just like in real estate. I'm not a realtor, but I could think of 5 businesses in the next 5 minutes that would be profitable.
Right.
I was a realtor, just because you have a target audience. If you have a target audience, you have a business. So, once you have an audience that comes to you and they look for your services, you got to find the little ancillary pieces that's missing that you can offer in addition to what you do.
Well, that's definitely another thing that we hype on here at HyperFast is to come up with a target audience. We actually talk about this process: segmentation, targeting, positioning, and some people try to go out and be everything to everybody, and that rarely works. It just takes too much energy, too much effort. Your efforts are just scattered too much, right? But if you can really narrow in, focus in on a niche market of just, it doesn't take many. It can be as little as a couple hundred or 1,000 or so, and that's all it takes to get started. But a lot of times people just never narrow that focus and define who their audience is and how they're going to position themselves to those.
They're way too, I live in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is wine country, horse country, but I have radio commercials where I hear people that just promote, they sell nothing but big farms and places where you could ride horses, and they're 10-acre and above lots, and there's only certain people that do that in our area. Well, they're massive sales. It's a limited inventory, but the commission on those is great.
Yeah. What was the transition like for you when you went from, someone else paying you to you got to go out and hunt and get the business for yourself? Because I feel like a lot that's real estate agents are like entrepreneurs in that they've got to go out and get the business for themselves usually.
Yeah, I mean, the basics in business are the same. It's fundamentals. It's like the fundamentals, and everything has fundamentals. You have to go find clients, then you have to find ones that are most likely to buy from you. So, I mean, there's just no getting around the heavy lifting. I get DMs every day. How do I get customers? Same way we all get customers. Go find them, and then attract them. We initially have to go get them, typically. And then they start coming to us. That's the hard, reputation pays off. You have a brand and you have a reputation. That's great. And they start chasing after you. But initially you have to go find them, and you just got to go find where they're either got to do volume. Just the law of volume says if I call on 100 people and you call on 10, even if your 10 are really good, I might be able to make up for it with my volume. So you either got to call on tons of people, or you got to have a really strategic introductory type of lead, but they're the basics. I don't think there's getting around it.
Yeah. I've seen time again, like real estate agents that come in and just hit the phones for 2 hours a day. They may not have success day one or week one or month one, but if you do that for a few months, it just at that point becomes law of averages, repetition, and you'll succeed. Most people though just won't stick with it for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, I know, because we don't like things that make us uncomfortable. The fact is that, why most people aren't successful and why most people live paycheck to paycheck? Because they're not willing to do the uncomfortable. I mean, we try to tiptoe around it and give all this other stuff, but I know why I got money, because I know what I did in my 20s and 30s most people weren't willing to do. Period. period. I can see every base I touched. And I know 9 out of 10 people were not willing to work as hard as I was, or to take a little bit of a risk and to do 3 jobs at one time. Like, I've never quit a job to start a business. There's like one of my super secrets. There's 168 hours in a week. Like, you don't quit one to do another. You stay with one that's paying you or brings you your repetitive business or whatever the case may be. And then you build something on the side. This idea, people always are, well, I'm going to quit my business. I'm going to quit my job. Have you earned the right to quit it? I mean, have you done a business that's replacing 75% of your income? I mean, what's this idea that you just kind of quit your job and do? To me, I don't even like the word quit. So,
yeah, I think there is a lot of value in maintaining, your existing income. Like when I started in real estate, I didn't quit my job till I had a huge pipeline. Like I was gonna make more in the next 90 days than I was in the next year at my job. And I said, all right, I think I'm good to go. But I was doing 9 to 5 at work, and then during lunch I would answer emails, follow up with prospects, and then the evenings I'd go show home. So they were long days, but it doesn't last forever. I think I did that for about 4 or 5 months. Not too hard to be spent.
And
people that go into deployments for a year. Women are pregnant for 9 months. Like you can, people can handle working more hours for short periods of time if that's what it takes to start your business and build up your sales pipeline.
Well, the one thing I've learned in salespeople, there's nothing, the idea of being like a desperate salesperson, that sounds great in theory, but I have always found a customer can smell desperation. They can smell broke. They can smell desperate. I've always thought it was better to kind of have a job where you didn't come across so pathetically broke. To me, again, I understand all the cliches, a hungry dog runs faster and all that good stuff. But I'm just saying, if you're an adult, forget everybody 25 and younger living on their buddy's couch or living with their parents. But the rest of us, in my case, I was married, I had a child, and I had a mortgage. Okay, business ideas are great, and I thought they would work, and I'm pretty confident myself, but I also know I need to pay the bills. I know that there's going to be a mortgage payment due 30 days from now. There's no getting around that. So, sometimes you just have to stick with your job.
What do you think's been the key in how you've been able to start so many businesses? I mean, over 20 is just a lot. Like, how are you just like doing one a year basically? Or
as a general rule, that's kind of my goal, is one a year.
Yeah.
I always figure, like, if you can't come up with an additional stream of income in 365 days, and when I create a division off of one of my companies, I run it as a separate entity. It has its own bank account, its own line item. It has to fend for itself. So if it basically, that way it doesn't ever kill the golden goose. And that's what a lot of entrepreneurs do. They get one thing that works, and then they kill that thing with all these little startup ventures that don't work. So I don't ever allow that to happen. So I'm entrepreneurial. I'm always looking for something new, but I try to stay within my strike zone. I like service companies. That's where I stay. I know that works. I like the margins. It doesn't require a lot of startup. Everything about it I like. So, but the one thing I think I do differently is I partner in business. I have 7 business partners. So ideas are great, but I always say 1 + 1 = done in my world. You pair me with my skill set and you put me with the opposite of me, and we're going to have a successful company. I'm good at branding, finding the right idea, testing it, making sure it's viable, getting it on the field, recruiting the team. I'm good at that first 18 months, creating the systems. After about 18 months, I'm bored. I want to rinse and repeat. So what I do is I partner with people that love consistency and steady, and they don't like risk. They're like, Sean, you do what you do. Like, I could never imagine getting this thing off the ground. Like, to them, that's the hardest thing in the world. To me, I can see all the blocks, it's easy for me. So I partner with people that are an expert in the business that I'm looking to start. They have tremendous experience, 20 years as an employee, let's say, and they would like to now have a seat at the table, maybe the opportunity to make more money. So they're the perfect mesh with my ambition, enthusiasm, and I have the money to bankroll it. So, so that's kind of what has been my formula throughout the years. I always partner.
So you're going to get the rocket ship off the ground, so to say, and then you want your other guys coming in, tweaking
they're going to run it. They're going to
dials.
circle it around the moon a few times. And what I always say to them when we get started, I said, 5 years from now, you're going to look at what I make, which is half, and it's going to bother you. But I want you to remember this day. And I want you to know that this company would not exist if it wasn't for me. Just remember, I put the startup capital. Remember, it was my idea. I'm the one who got everything off the ground. And because I know that there's going to be that day where they're like, gosh, man, I'm splitting 50-50 with them. And they think they're doing so much. And I'm like, hey, listen, 0 times 0 is always 0. If I didn't get this off the ground, you wouldn't be managing anything right now. So where you're excelling and you're doing so good, I knew you would be good at that. That's why I partnered with you. So, and I've not actually had any problems with partnerships because I do that early on. I let them know there's going to be the day where you're like, man, I can't believe I split a check with him. Sometimes I have to do the quiet little reminder. But
what's been your most successful or funnest company to have built so far?
Yeah, I don't know if successful and fun went together.
Yeah, or maybe it's two different ones.
Yeah. Well, let me share this because this is different than what I think most people have heard. I think passion is an entrepreneur's mistress. I think it is the most misleading road in entrepreneurship. Example, I'm passionate about golf. It doesn't mean I go buy a driving range. Okay. I mean, that just to make, I love beach vacations. I wouldn't own beach real estate. Has super high insurance. There's a lot of things I don't like about it. It's very high. I like that, but I don't like it as a business. There's a lot of things I like and I'm passionate about, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily a good business. So I don't look for sexy companies. Like I talked about my detailing company, and the magazine kind of looked a little more sexier than them. But the companies that I've made the most money in, I started a handyman company 21 years ago. I've made like $60 million in that one. As a matter of fact, I just showed my son my tax return last week because this will probably air later, but right now it's October 12th in my world and everything's due by October 15th. And I showed him a tax return where I made more money than a sitting president of the United States, which makes $400,000 on a handyman company. I made $413,000 in my pocket for a handyman company. So that's just one of my companies that just kind of show you my models. I look for great need. I want a marketplace that needs something. I don't care how sexy it is. I don't care if it's installing toilets. I don't care if it's cleaning toilets, to be frank with you. If there's an attractive margin between what I have to pay somebody to do the job and what a customer is willing to pay me, and a lot of times there's not. That's why I wouldn't have a cleaning company if there's not enough margin. But my point is, if there's an attractive margin, I love it. I own a digital marketing company. It's the biggest digital marketing company in Virginia. That's sexier, but it doesn't make anywhere close to what my handyman company makes. It looks sexy in 2020, but the handyman company is like a human, it's like being Pablo Escobar, for crying out loud. I mean, the phone rings off the hook. Customers pay us between $95 and $120 an hour all day long, every day. I got tons of vans. Typical employee makes $25 an hour. Did you catch the margin on that? I'm making between $70 and $100 an hour margin. So the average person makes me between $600 and $800 clean every single day. I don't care what business, that's a margin that you can take, that you can be happy with. So it's not having a sexy company. It's having a company where the marketplace says, I want you, I need you, and I'm willing to pay you to do it.
And I know you've got a book out to help people with how to evaluate and rules to follow, right, for startup businesses. You want to tell the listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, and you can get it for free. That's the most important thing. Everything that I talk about is free. So if you go to SeanCastrina.com, my personal site, we always have a book on there for free. And right now we have my first book called The 8 Unbreakable Rules for Business Startup Success. And it's just, I kind of, after 15 years, I was on a beach vacation with my buddies from college, and I just kind of started writing down like little rules that I did that made sense, like why my businesses were succeeding. We're 1 and 2 fail, 9 out of 10 fail in 10 years. I've had 3 businesses that have seen the 20th anniversary. So I knew that I was doing things a little differently. And that's why I kind of wrote this book and came up with ideas that I thought that if you followed them, you had a better likelihood of success. And in entrepreneurship, there's no guarantee, but it definitely gets you a little bit better odds.
And that was, just so everyone can hear it again, SeanCastrina.com. If you go there, they can get a free copy.
Free book, 8 Unbreakable Rules for Business Startup Success. And it shares, 8 principles that I have found that if you apply them, you're far more likely to have a successful startup.
Awesome. Well, before we sign off, we always do a hyper fast round with our guests. If you're ready for some rapid fire questions. All right. What's your biggest piece of advice to a brand new real estate agent?
I think you just have to outwork everybody. And I know it's not sexy, but there's no substitute. Every piece of success that I have found in life is like a roller coaster. You always got to do that first climb. And the higher you climb, the best roller coasters have the biggest first climb. Let's go to Cedar Point in Ohio and things like that. Because the bigger the climb, it propels you through all the loops and all the fun stuff. So, man, I just simply think it's the law of volume. I will work more hours, get in front of more qualified people than anybody that I know. And that just works. There's no getting around that.
And with as many businesses as you have started now, how do you stay motivated to keep increasing a business after you've gotten it through that launch phase and it's kind of to the operator, right? How do you keep motivated to do that and to go out and keep doing a new one every year?
Yeah. And I think I think there's a difference. I think that we assume that every business owner is an entrepreneur, and I don't believe that. Like I know people that own that fix my cars. He has an auto repair shop. He's got one of them. He's happy as a pig in mud, probably making $100,000 a year. I got a friend who owns a plumbing business. He's got one. He's happy. That's a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I love the startup. I love the energy of putting the team on the field. I have many, many ideas. So I think that we're wired differently. I'm definitely an entrepreneur in that I never run out of ideas. I'm always looking for improvement. I'm always looking for expansion. That's what excites me. That's my passion. So I'm passionate about business in general, where some people are passionate about maybe what they're doing, what their business does. That's not necessarily my thing.
What's been your biggest challenge and how did you overcome it?
Biggest challenge. Wow, I've had a few. In my 20s, my life kind of blew up a little bit, went through a bankruptcy. And, that looks like, at the time, it looks like you'll never overcome that. And now I look, 20 some years later and, I wouldn't miss a meal, give or take the next 100 years. What I tell people is that, life is way harder than you think it's going to be. It just is. And if you just got to know that it is. And so you're going to get hit with something you never saw coming, but you need to be shocked how much resilience you have if you draw on it. I think that's the thing that, something's going to just absolutely pummel you if you try to achieve anything of significance. And when it happens, you just got to get back up. And a lot of these are very boring things that I'm sharing with you, but they work. As a guy who's 53, I'm just telling you, I've had things that I never imagined would happen. And on the other side of that, I've achieved things I never thought I would write a book. I don't even like signing birthday cards. I own a handyman company, makes 60 to 80, over $60 million. I can't put together a 3-piece birdhouse. I own a digital marketing company. I don't even know how to go online. I got to get my son to do it half the time because I do something wrong. I sign in with the wrong thing. My point is that you can achieve just crazy stuff. And yeah, you're going to get knocked down a few times.
When you're not working on your businesses or coming up with new ones, where would we find you? What would you be doing?
I am the boringest person ever. I love to read. I love a nap. I think a nap is an older person's indulgence. This idea that you work 100 hours a week. Well, listen, at some point that stops because I'll still take a good nap. And then I love sports, man. I love working out. I love playing golf, love playing tennis, love moving. I think that the more energy you put out, you tend to have more energy when you do other things. So if you're if you're a person who doesn't move around a lot, typically that starts to affect you in that you just come across like a walrus.
All right.
You're just kind of slow.
I agree with that. I feel like the more physical energy you have, the more energy you have to put in your
When
business.
I interview people, I can tell from the time they walk from my reception area to my conference room if I'm going to hire them. I call it the walrus syndrome. If they drag when they walk, Warren Buffett says the same thing. He hires people with energy, intelligence, and integrity. And you can't make up for it. Energy is just the X factor certain people have. I have it, and I do like it in other people.
Awesome. Last question. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
5 years. I'm fine doing with what I'm doing because I have my podcast, the 10-Minute Entrepreneur Podcast, which really allows me to do what I love. I love to teach business because I see, I speak at colleges and I see it taught by people that have no business teaching it. They're like 20 years ago, they did something and they're reading like the Lean Startup or something. They're reading like the E-Myth. But when I'm in their office, they're like, oh, it's so great to have somebody who's actually started a business who's going to teach my class today. I'm like, well, you have no problem taking a paycheck for doing it. So I love my podcast is just the genesis of all my ideas. Like every time I get an idea, I can put it in 10 minutes into a teaching lesson. So, I love hosting the podcast, teaching startup entrepreneurs, equipping, encouraging them. And, and writing books. So and making money. You know what? I found money's not everything, but it's in the top 5.
Yeah, well, and it allows you to do a lot of other stuff. I mean,
it's amazing how many other things you can do, man. I'm able to feed, educate, provide medical attention to people around the world that I will never meet, countries I will never step foot in. Money allows you to have an exponential impact. When you're broke, you can only give your time, and it's a 1-for-1 hour ratio.
Well, I enjoyed our time today, Sean. I know our listeners will get a ton of value out of this. You brought a lot of lessons, and just a reminder, everyone, you can go to SeanCastrina.com, get Sean's book for free. If people want to get in touch with you or connect with you more, I know you mentioned the podcast, but what are the best ways for them to do that?
You can go through Instagram. I'm verified on Instagram and Facebook, though I've never been to Facebook in like the last decade. That's what makes it funny that I'm verified on it. I find that to be so hysterical. But Instagram, I actually do look at, but I really believe going through my podcast will give you the most free information. I pack tons of stuff in there, and I'm always interviewing like founders of companies. So it's like getting an MBA if you don't have time to go back.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on this show today, Sean. And for our listeners and viewers out there, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the HyperFast Show. Subscribe to us if you want to make sure you get the latest and greatest HyperFast shows. And remember, we love reviews. Reviews help us bring better and better guests and improve our shows. So give us the good, the bad, and the ugly. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you want to see more, click right here. And if you're new to this channel, click below to subscribe and turn on post notifications so you don't miss out. And leave some comments about what you think on the videos. I'll see you next time.